Now, Michael, absolutely fascinating report. Been reading all your copy as well. Amazing. Look, central banks and a lot of economists I could mention think that food prices don't deserve to be put into the core inflation mix because they're just too volatile. They move too much. But I actually think food is an absolute key to what other demands and second round effects could come further down the line. But what you're saying seems to be that any hopes from the CBs, the central banks, of inflation abating this year, that could be forlorn, sir. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve. And yes, I'd agree with you. This is been a price rise in terms of food inflation for the last year and a half. We've seen a steady progression, rising food prices, and we don't see that ebbing anytime soon. So to say that it's going to be temporary or that we're going to see our food prices move back to where they were is just not realistic at this point in time. Supplies are very low and demand is irrepressible. And so we do see, a lot of food companies who have to hedge their 2022 ingredients, effectively doing so at higher prices. And that's going to be passed on to the consumer.
Michael, I'm bemused. Yeah, I'm bemused why, when I was at COP26, pretty much for 2 weeks, I didn't hear more about food systems as well. But one thing I do believe at the moment, that in the short to medium term, if we are going to see food systems being part of the initiative to have greener supply chains and boosting that side of the climate change roster, it's going to be more expensive in the medium to short term. That in itself is going to add more inflation, isn't it? Or am I wrong somewhere?
Well, absolutely. It's already happening. The transition to a green economy involves a lot of high quality food ingredients like vegetable oil. And it is fascinating to see how much of a demand component biofuels can actually have of high quality food ingredients. And we've seen that price reflected, or that demand reflected in price. For example, vegetable oil prices effectively doubling. That is going to have an impact on your bottom line if you're a consumer.
Michael, we've spent a lot of time during the pandemic talking about how you create more equality across the food chain, where you lift wages for a lot of rural and farm workers. That's going to be part of the mix as we talk about ESG. But the other side of the story is that there could be wider implications for populations if you do see escalating prices. So just talk us through the societal implications of higher food inflation.
Well, absolutely. I think what you have is disposable income has been increasing for much of the world over the past decade. And much of that is to do with the fact that we saw low food prices and falling costs for a lot of these foods, as you saw expansion of arable land in areas like the Black Sea and also in South America. And that provided lower cost goods relative to traditional producers and exporters for the world. And now what you're seeing with this incredible food inflation is that disposable income being pulled back, and that's having an impact on hundreds of millions of people.
Michael, you flagged up a number of different factors here that's driving the price rise, from weather events, El Nino impacts, expensive shipping costs, as you know, transportation has been huge, and also increased demand that we're witnessing out there. Do any of these factors change over the course of this year, and would just change in one of these areas bring about a difference across the entire complex?
Absolutely. And as we come out of the festive season, I think it's important to see whether or not the relentlessness of the demand that we've seen and the logistical disruptions ease a little bit, because that could provide more availability. But from upstream to downstream, we have seen across the food sector, rising inflation, and that is a major concern. And it's not one, given the fundamentals and the dynamics of hedging within this industry. A lot of the ingredients have been bought for 2022, and so you may see that inflation reflected in the coming year. So it will take time for us to see these pressures ease.